Okay, let's unpack this. Think about um, the most massive, imposing monument you have ever seen in person.
Oh, yeah.
Like maybe you've stood at the base of the Lincoln Memorial in D.C., just, looking up at that colossal marble figure.
Right. Or even like the Great Pyramids or the Colosseum.
Exactly. When we stand in front of these structures, they project this absolute, an unquestionable aura of permanence.
Yeah, they really do. They feel eternal.
Right. They're carved in stone, they're mathematically precise, and they practically scream to the world like, we are great, we have conquered nature, and we will be here forever.
Unshakable.
But if you spend any time at all studying history, you start to realize that underneath all that marble, underneath that carefully curated image of invincibility, there's almost always this profound, humming sense of anxiety.
And absolutely. It's a desperate human need to convince ourselves that our empires can somehow, outlast the inevitable decay of time. What's fascinating here is that it's the ultimate paradox of human civilization. The louder a society boasts about its immortality, the closer it usually is to the precipice.
Wow, that's so true.
We build our highest walls and carve our deepest monuments when we're, most terrified of what's lurking just outside the gates. The architecture of triumph is very often just the architecture of fear in disguise.
I love that phrase, the architecture of fear. And that paradox is exactly where we're going today. Welcome to a brand new deep dive where we're heading back to one of the most famous monuments in all of Western history.
But it's not made of stone.
Right. The fascinating thing is it's not a monument made of stone or bronze. It's a monument made entirely of words.
Pericles' funeral oration.
Yes, as recorded by the ancient historian Thucydides. This is a defining text of ancient Greece, delivered around 431 BCE in Athens.
Right.
Now, as we look at the source material we've gathered, which has some incredibly rich analysis of the speech, the history, the linguistics, we are exploring this through a very specific lens.
Because it's not just a history lesson.
No, not at all. For those of us navigating our faith in the modern world, this ancient text is surprisingly relevant for you to understand. We really want to know, how can unpacking this 2,500-year-old vision of the ideal city actually deepen a Christian's faith?
Yeah, it's a huge question.
How does seeing the inner workings of Athenian political spin equip us to recognize the very real modern temptation toward the idolatry of the state?
Right.
And ultimately, how does it inspire you to live more fully for Christ when we're just constantly surrounded by the competing claims of earthly empires?
Well, what's truly fascinating here, especially when you bring that theological lens to it, is the sheer scale of the collision between human ambition and human frailty.
The contrast is wild.
It really is. On one hand, you have Pericles' speech, which is quite possibly the most beautiful, soaring rhetoric of human self-sufficiency ever recorded.
It's like the ultimate manifesto, right?
Exactly, the ultimate manifesto of human exceptionalism. It's a society looking in the mirror and basically declaring itself functionally divine.
Right.
But on the other hand, it crashes directly and, tragically into the harsh biological reality of human weakness.
Because of the plague.
Yes. And it is right there in that violent collision between what humans claim they can do and what they actually suffer that we find this incredibly stark contrast with the biblical kingdom of God.
Wow.
The earthly city reaches its absolute zenith in the words of Pericles, and yet we're about to see how it fundamentally lacks the foundation that only the city of God provides.
Yeah, to really feel the weight of that collision, we have to understand the literal life and death stakes of the world Pericles was living in.
You have to feel the weather of a moment.
Exactly. We can't just read the words on a page. We are in the winter of 431, crossing over into 430 BCE. And the geopolitical landscape is, well, it's a powder keg that just exploded.
The Peloponnesian War.
Right. We're right at the beginning of this war, which is a conflict that will drag on for nearly 3 decades and just completely reshape the Greek world.
It is the defining clash of antiquity. I mean, you have two superpowers that represent entirely different ways of being human.
Athens and Sparta.
Right. On one side, you have Athens. And at this point, Athens isn't just a city. It is a sprawling naval empire.
The Delian League.
Yeah, they are the head of the Delian League, which started out decades earlier as like a mutual defense pact against the Persians.
But it changed.
Oh, completely. Athens essentially transformed it into a mafia-like protection racket. They have absolute naval supremacy, they control the trade routes, and under Pericles,
Who is their leading statesman, right?
right, their strategos, their lead general, under him, they're experiencing this massive cultural and economic golden age.
This is when they're building the Parthenon, isn't it?
Exactly, the exact era. The wealth flowing into the city is astronomical.
And then on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, you have Sparta and the Peloponnesian League.
The polar opposite.
I mean, they are the polar opposite of Athens in almost every conceivable way. Sparta is deeply traditional, rigidly militaristic, and totally land-based.
They do not care about philosophy.
No, or building grand marble temples. They care about infantry formations.
Yeah.
And the war finally kicks off because of escalating tensions involving Spartan allies like Corinth and Megara.
Athens is aggressively expanding.
Right, projecting its power. And Sparta essentially looks at the map and decides they have to strike now before Athenian hegemony becomes completely unbreakable.
The clash was totally inevitable. I mean, Thucydides himself writes that the truest cause of the war was the growth of the power of Athens and the alarm which this inspired in Sparta.
Ah, the Thucydides trap.
Yes, the classic Thucydides trap, an established power acting out of fear against a rising power.
Right, but what I find so wild in our notes is the specific strategy Pericles chooses when the Spartans finally march on Athens.
It's radical.
It really is. He doesn't march the famous Athenian hoplites out to meet the Spartans in an open field of battle. That would be playing right into Sparta's hands.
Yeah, they'd lose that fight.
Exactly. Instead, he advocates this incredibly radical, purely defensive land strategy combined with naval offense.
He basically tells everyone to hide.
Yeah. He orders all the Athenians who live out in the countryside to abandon their ancestral farms, pull their families and their livestock inside the massive long walls that connect Athens to its port at Piraeus, and just sit there.
To hunker down.
Right. They rely entirely on imported food coming in by ship because the Spartans don't have a navy to blockade them, and then Pericles uses the Athenian navy to launch hit-and-run raids on the Spartan coast.
It's such a bizarre way to fight a war.
I was reading this, and the best analogy I could think of is that it's like locking yourself and your entire extended family inside a high-tech panic room.
A giant panic room.
Yeah. And then watching on the security cameras as the gang of thieves slowly dismantles your house, burns your landscaping, and steals your cars brick by brick.
Oh, man.
You are technically safe, but the psychological torture of just watching it happen has to be unbearable.
The panic room analogy is totally spot on, especially when you consider the cultural context. Imagine the psychological toll.
It must have been immense.
You have tens of thousands of Athenian citizens who are proud, independent farmers. Their identity is tied to their land. Their ancestors are buried on that land. Their sacred olive groves are there.
Right.
And Pericles forces them to pack up everything they can carry, move into these crowded, unsanitary makeshift spaces between these towering walls, and then literally stand on the ramparts and watch the Spartan army set fire to their fields just a few miles away.
Wow.
The tension, the anger, the claustrophobia, it would be suffocating.
And it is in that exact claustrophobic, high-anxiety atmosphere after the first full year of fighting, the first raids, and the first casualties that the city pauses to hold a public funeral.
The Patrios Nomos.
Right. Our sources detail this incredibly strict ancestral custom, the Patrios Nomos. This wasn't just a quick memorial service where people said a few nice words and went home.
Not at all.
This is a massive, profoundly sacred civic ritual designed to manage the collective grief of a terrified city.
Yeah, the Patrios Nomos dictated a deeply choreographed sequence of events. It started with the bones of the fallen soldiers being displayed publicly in a tent for 3 days.
3 whole days.
Yeah. This allowed the families to grieve intimately, to bring offerings, to, process the reality of the loss. Then came the public spectacle.
Right, a procession.
There was a massive, solemn procession through the city. The bones were carried in cypress wood coffins on wagons, 1 coffin for each of the 10 ancestral tribes of Athens.
Wow.
And crucially, there was always 1 empty bed, fully decorated, carried in the procession for the missing.
Missing in action.
Exactly. The soldiers whose bodies couldn't be recovered from the battlefield or the sea.
That detail of the empty bed is just haunting. It really brings home the reality of ancient warfare.
It does. And they processed out to the Kerameikos, which was the most beautiful, prestigious public cemetery located just outside the city walls. And there, after the physical burial was complete, a man chosen by the city for his intellectual gifts and his public standing in this specific year Pericles would step up onto a high platform to deliver the eulogy.
So his voice could carry over the massive crowd.
Right.
Okay, but wait. I have to interject here because there is this glaring, almost horrifying irony hanging over this entire scene.
Oh, the timeline.
Yes. Thucydides, the guy writing this massive history, isn't live tweeting the event. He is writing this account years later, or at least editing it later. He knows exactly what happens next.
He knows what's coming.
Right. This soaring, optimistic speech is given in the winter when the people are feeling okay. They survived the first year, the panic room walls are holding, the Navy is doing its job.
Right. Spirits are relatively high.
But Thucydides deliberately places this beautiful speech in his manuscript immediately before his graphic, horrifying description of the Great Plague of Athens in 430 BCE.
The juxtaposition is brutal.
It's insane. A plague that rips through this overcrowded, walled-in city, kills tens of thousands of people, creates absolute social anarchy, and eventually kills Pericles himself.
Yeah, he dies from it.
So if Thucydides knows the plague is about to wipe out a huge chunk of the city and completely derail Pericles' grand strategy, why dedicate so much precious parchment to recording this triumphant speech?
It seems counterintuitive.
Why not just say, Pericles gave a moving eulogy and then everyone got sick?
Because the juxtaposition is the point. That editorial decision is arguably the central thesis of Thucydides' entire historical philosophy.
Really?
Yeah. He is deliberately forcing the reader to experience a violent whiplash between the Athenian ideal and the devastating reality.
The whiplash.
Exactly. The Greeks had concepts for this. Logos, which is the word, the rhetoric, the beautiful concept, the rational argument.
Right, the logo.
And ergon, which is the deed, the actual events, the messy, unavoidable reality.
Logos and ergon.
Yes. By placing the absolute highest peak of human aspiration, this speech claiming Athens is invincible right next to the lowest, most degrading valley of human suffering and biological reality, Thucydides is asking a terrifying question.
Which is?
How fragile is human greatness? I mean, when your massive stone walls hold against the Spartan army but completely fail against a microscopic pathogen, what good is all your soaring rhetoric?
Wow. It completely undercuts the arrogance of the empire.
Totally.
It's like being on the deck of the Titanic, giving a passionate toast about how human engineering has conquered the oceans, while the reader can literally see the iceberg looming in the background of the very next page.
That's a perfect analogy.
It makes the speech feel almost tragic.
Tragically hubristic. And when you know that grim reality awaits the people standing in that cemetery, it changes how you analyze every single word Pericles says.
Oh, for sure.
Because he doesn't just get up and deliver the standard comforting eulogy everyone in that crowd expected to hear. He pulls off what our sources highlight as a brilliant, calculated, rhetorical bait and switch.
Yes. Let's look at exactly how he subverts the entire genre of the ancient eulogy.
The epitaphios logos.
Right, because the people standing in the Kerameigos, shivering in the winter air, had very specific expectations. Our research breaks down this genre. What was the standard script Pericles was supposed to follow?
Well, the epitaphios logos was a well-established subgenre of what the Greeks called epideictic rhetoric.
Right.
The rhetoric of praise and blame. It had deep ancient roots, echoing all the way back to the Homeric funeral laments for fallen heroes like Achilles or Hector.
Oh,
The formula was highly predictable and rigidly structured. The speaker would start with an extended praise of the ancient ancestors, mythic founders who won ancient glories.
classic.
Then a praise of the immediate fathers. But the vast, vast majority of the speech was supposed to be dedicated to praising the specific, heroic military deeds of the dead soldiers lying in the coffins right in front of them.
The guys who just died.
Exactly. The speaker would recount their bravery, how they fought, how they died, and finally offer a long personal consolation to the grieving parents and widows. It was supposed to be deeply personal, focused entirely on the past and the individuals who died.
But Pericles gets up to the podium, goes through the absolute bare minimum of those expected motions, and then he completely pivots.
The hard pivot.
He aggressively minimizes the direct praise of the dead soldiers. He essentially breezes past their specific military deeds, and instead he launches into this massive, sweeping encomium, this extended, passionate praise of Athens itself.
Yes.
Specifically, he praises its politia, which translates roughly to its constitution, its institutions, its civic character, its whole way of life.
And the city itself.
Right. I was trying to wrap my head around how strange this would be, and it's like imagine going to a memorial service for a beloved family member who died tragically in the line of duty.
Right.
You are sitting there, heartbroken, waiting to hear warm stories about their life, their hobbies, their character. And the speaker gets to the microphone, says they were very brave, and then proceeds to spend 40 uninterrupted minutes passionately defending the philosophical concept of the United States Constitution or the British parliamentary system.
It would be so bizarre.
It would feel incredibly jarring. Some people might even find it deeply offensive.
To a modern audience, it would seem almost sociopathic in its lack of personal empathy.
Yeah.
But we have to ask why a statesman as brilliant as Pericles makes this specific structural choice. From chapters 2.34 to 2.46 in Thucydides' text, Pericles is executing a masterclass in political and psychological engineering.
Really? How so?
By praising the city itself over the individual men who died, he is attempting to forge a bulletproof communal identity. Think about the panic room reality we just described. The people are terrified, they're locked behind walls, their homes are burning. They have just suffered their first casualties of what looks to be a very long war.
Right. Morale is fragile.
Exactly. If he just talks about how sad it is that these specific young men died, he risks letting despair and grief take over the city. He risks a complete collapse in morale.
So he needs them to look past the coffins. He has to give their deaths a higher meaning.
That's exactly it. He has to convince the survivors that the entity these men died to protect the Athenian politia is so exceptionally beautiful, so completely unique in the history of human civilization that it was objectively worth the sacrifice.
Wow.
And more importantly, he has to convince them that it is worth the continued sacrifice of everyone listening. He is fostering unity. He is implicitly saying, do not just mourn these men, emulate them, prove that you are worthy of the city they just bled for.
That is incredibly potent. And the sources point out some specific rhetorical weaponry he uses to pull this off seamlessly.
Yeah, the rhetorical tools are amazing.
There are two classical terms that jumped out from the analysis: preteritio and synkrisis. How does he wield these tools to manipulate the crowd's focus?
Well, they are classic, highly effective tools of ancient oratory. Praeteritio is a rhetorical device where you draw intense attention to something by explicitly stating that you are going to ignore it.
Right. It's like when a politician gets on a debate stage and says, I am not even going to stoop to mentioning my opponent's terrible record on the economy or their recent scandals.
Exactly.
By explicitly saying you aren't mentioning it, you just beamed it directly into the audience's brain.
Yes, it's a rhetorical Jedi mind trick. Pericles does this with the military deeds of the dead.
How does he phrase it?
He essentially says, I will pass over the details of our military victories or how we heroically repelled the barbarians because you are already intimately familiar with them. I don't need to bore you with things you already know.
Oh, that's clever.
It is a brilliant stroke of praeteritio. It allows him to avoid a tedious, depressing recounting of battles. It flatters the audience by assuming they are highly educated and knowledgeable. And most importantly, it clears the rhetorical deck so he can talk about what he really wants to talk about.
Which is the philosophical character of the city.
Exactly.
It's a totally smooth pivot. And what about the other tool, synkrisis?
Synkrisis is the art of implicit, ongoing contrast or comparison. Throughout the entire middle section of the speech, Pericles is praising Athens, but he is constantly, quietly holding it up against a dark mirror.
Sparta.
Right. And that mirror is Sparta. Now, he never actually says the word Sparta in this section, but every single virtue he claims for Athens is a direct, calculated jab at Spartan culture.
Oh, wow.
When he praises Athenian openness to foreigners and international trade, it is a glaring contrast to Spartan xenophobia and their official state practices in Alasia. Yeah, the routine expulsion of foreigners from their territory.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And when he praises Athenian versatility and their spontaneous natural courage, it is a direct insult to the rigid, lifelong, brutal military training of the Spartans, the Agoj.
So he's subtweeting Sparta the whole time.
Essentially, yes. He is defining Athenian identity not just by what it is, but by what it so proudly and defiantly is not.
Which naturally brings us to the actual content of that praise. Pericles constructs a vision of human society that sounds almost utopian.
It does.
We really need to look closely at exactly what he is praising, because this specific worldview of ancient Athens is exactly what is going to collide so forcefully with Christian theology later in our discussion.
Right. The collision.
What are the specific virtues he boasts about that make up this Athenian ideal?
The list is comprehensive, and frankly, it forms the bedrock of what we now consider the Western democratic ideal.
Okay.
He praises their democracy, noting proudly that power rests in the hands of the many, not the few. He praises their freedom. The Greek word is eleutheria, which for the Athenians meant not just political freedom to vote, but freedom in their daily private lives to live exactly as they pleased without their neighbors giving them dirty looks or the state interfering.
Which, again, is a huge contrast to Sparta,
Right.
where the state literally regulated every aspect of your daily life down to what you ate and where you slept.
Precisely. He praises their openness. He praises their meritocracy, explicitly stating that class or poverty doesn't bar a man from serving the state if he has the ability to do so.
Right.
He praises their versatility, the idea that an Athenian citizen is not a one-dimensional drone bred only for war, but a well-rounded, philosophical, cultured individual capable of adapting gracefully to any situation.
It's an amazing pitch.
And he sums all of this up with this massive defining metaphor. He boldly calls Athens the education or the school of Greece.
The ultimate model.
Uh,
The shining city on a hill that everyone else should be taking notes
That's
from.
exactly.
Now, our sources get into something really fascinating here to help us understand how this rhetoric worked on the psychology of the audience.
The linguistics.
Yes, there's this fascinating note in our research about the actual Greek grammar used in the speech. The linguists who study this use a framework called systemic functional linguistics, and specifically something called Campbell's aspect model.
Oh, this is great.
Now, I know dropping linguistic theory into a history discussion can sound like a fast track to putting people to sleep, but the way this works is actually brilliant.
It really is.
It looks at how Pericles uses different tenses, specifically the aorist tense and the present tense, to subtly manipulate the listener's perception of time and reality. Can you break down what is going on under the hood of the language here?
Sure. It is actually a beautiful way to understand the emotional, visceral impact of the speech. In Greek, tense isn't just about a timeline, like past, present, or future.
Right.
It is heavily focused on aspect, which is how the speaker wants you to physically view the action in your mind's eye.
Okay.
Aspect.
The aorist tense is what linguists call perfective. It views an action from the outside as a complete, whole, finished event. It is often used for foregrounding significant, monumental deeds.
Just looking back. Right. So when Pericles talks about the heroic actions of the ancestors, or the physical, bloody sacrifice of the dead soldiers in battle, he uses these aorist verbs. It paints their deeds as permanent, completed monuments in history. They are fixed. They are done. They are unchangeable.
Like carving something into stone. You can look at it, but it's a finished product.
Exactly. But when he shifts away from the dead and starts praising the politeia, the constitution, the ongoing virtues of the city, the freedom, the democracy, he shifts heavily and intentionally into the present tense.
Which does what?
Well, the present tense in Greek has an imperfective aspect. It views the action from the inside as ongoing, unfolding, and currently in progress.
Oh, so it feels alive, it feels immediate, like it's breathing right in front of them?
Yes. By using the present tense for the city's virtues, he creates an overwhelming sense of proximity.
Wow.
He's telling the shivering, grieving audience, the ancestors' deeds are complete, they are stone monuments, but the greatness of Athens isn't in the past. It is happening right now, in you, in this very moment. It is ongoing.
That is so smart.
It is a profoundly subtle linguistic trick that takes the static, heavy grief of a funeral and turns it into dynamic, present tense, civic energy.
That is incredibly manipulative in the most brilliant way possible. It's no wonder he was such a dominant political figure.
Truly.
But I have a fundamental question about all of this. We are dissecting these words as if Pericles handed Thucydides a polished manuscript.
Right, which he didn't.
Exactly. Thucydides literally admits earlier in his work in Book 1, Chapter 22, that he didn't have a stenographer. He reconstructs these speeches based on what he remembers, what others told him, and crucially, what he thought was appropriate to the occasion.
Yes, the appropriate standard.
So are we actually reading a historical transcript of Pericles, or are we just reading a piece of brilliant philosophical propaganda written by Thucydides years later to make his own point?
You have hit on one of the longest-running, most fiercely debated questions in classical scholarship, and the analysis in our sources leans into that exact ambiguity.
Is it real or is it fiction?
Is this a historical record, or is this Thucydides' own political philosophy being put into the mouth of a famous man, like a ventriloquist? Most scholars agree it is a synthesis of both.
Okay, a mix.
It certainly draws on very real, historically verifiable cultural assumptions of the time. The concepts of philia, deep civic friendship and loyalty, and our excellence, virtue, and fulfilling your potential were undeniably the currency of Athenian self-identity.
So they actually talked like this.
Yes, Thucydides is capturing the authentic spirit, the true cultural flavor of Athenian exceptionalism.
So the vibe is accurate, even if the exact words are touched up. He's capturing the essence of how Athens viewed itself, but maybe turning the volume all the way up to 10.
Yes, it is highly idealized, and Thucydides does this deliberately because he is using this speech not just as a historical record, but as a philosophical exploration.
To make that contrast we talked about earlier.
Exactly. He needs Pericles to articulate the absolute maximum potential of human civic achievement, so that the impending fall, the plague, and the eventual loss of the war hits the reader with maximum philosophical force.
I think it's important we pause here and acknowledge the mechanics of what we are looking at.
Yeah, the myth-making.
Right. When we analyze political rhetoric, whether it is an ancient Athenian statesman boasting about being the ultimate flawless democracy or a modern politician giving a State of the Union address, we have to recognize the myth-making at play.
Absolutely.
We see politicians do this today all the time. Right? They tell a story about their nation that highlights all the best angels and completely ignores the shadows.
They leave out the bad parts.
Exactly. Pericles praises their radical freedom, but conveniently leaves out the fact that this freedom relied heavily on a massive population of enslaved people. He praises their democracy, but ignores that this democratic empire aggressively oppressed and extorted the other Greek states in the Delian League. We have to impartially recognize how leaders use idealized, hyperbole, and selective memory to forge national identity.
That is a vital point of discernment. Pericles is engaging in myth-making. It is beautiful, structurally flawless myth-making, but it is myth nonetheless.
That's an idol.
He is constructing an idol out of words. And recognizing that gap between the idealized myth and the broken reality is exactly what transitions us from being merely students of ancient history to being theologians of culture.
Which brings us to the core of our deep dive today.
A Christian lens.
Yes. We have seen Pericles paint a picture of a magnificent earthly city, a city so great, so utterly self-sufficient that it demands ultimate physical sacrifice from its citizens.
Right.
So what does this ancient political spin room mean for a Christian trying to live faithfully today? How does this analysis actually equip a believer to love Christ more deeply and to navigate the incredibly complex, often overwhelming political world we live in?
It's a great question.
Our sources point us heavily toward biblical theology and the writings of the early church fathers to answer this. And the first major theme that emerges is the subtle, seductive danger of the idolatry of the state.
Right. If we pull back and connect this Athenian ideal to the grand narrative of Scripture, we see a profound fundamental clash of ultimate allegiances.
A clash of kingdoms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pericles' speech, for all its undeniable beauty, essentially elevates the state, the polis, to the level of the divine.
He really does.
He literally asks the citizens to gaze day after day on the power of the city and become her lovers. The city becomes the ultimate object of worship.
Wow.
It becomes the ultimate source of meaning for a human life, and therefore the ultimate entity worthy of human sacrifice. It is a completely closed system of human self-sufficiency.
They don't need anyone else.
In Pericles' vision, Athens doesn't need the gods to be great. Athens just needs the brilliance, the versatility, and the blood of Athenians.
It is the Tower of Babel wrapped in a beautifully tailored philosophical toga.
I love that.
It's humanity saying, look at what we have built. We can reach the heavens on our own.
That is exactly what it is. And the Christian worldview sharply critiques this idea that any human polity, no matter how democratic, how free, how open, or how meritocratic, can save itself apart from God.
Right.
The biblical covenant community is founded on the exact opposite premise of Pericles' speech. It is founded on humanity's total dependence on divine grace, not human excellence.
Let's draw out that contrast between the earthly polis and the kingdom of God, because it is so stark when you put them side by side.
It really is.
The earthly city of Athens relies on massive stone walls to keep its enemies out. It relies on naval supremacy to secure its food. It relies on human versatility and intellect to secure its existence.
It's fragile.
It is incredibly fragile, as the plague is about to prove in terrifying detail. But the New Testament concepts of the polis of God, the heavenly city, the New Jerusalem, what is its foundation? How does it differ fundamentally from Pericles' panic room?
Its foundation is the unchanging, eternal nature of God himself. It requires no physical walls to keep enemies out because Christ has already conquered the ultimate enemies of sin and death.
Wow.
We see the early church fathers engaging very critically with this type of classical political thought. Take Augustine of Hippo, for example.
Okay.
He wrote his monumental work, City of God, in the aftermath of the sack of Rome in 410 AD.
Which is a perfect parallel.
It is.
Rome falls, the supposedly eternal city is breached, and people are terrified, just like the Athenians facing the plague and the Spartans.
Exactly. And the pagans were blaming the Christians, saying, Rome fell because we abandoned the old gods and stopped worshiping the state.
Right.
Augustine writes this massive treatise to say, essentially, you are trusting the wrong city.
You're trusting the wrong city.
Yeah. Augustine was deeply educated in classical texts. He understood the brilliance of Greek and Roman civic philosophy, but he recognized its absolute limits.
What did he argue?
He argued that the earthly city is formed by the love of self, even to the contempt of God, while the heavenly city is formed by the love of God, even to the contempt of self.
That is a staggering contrast.
It really is.
The highest Athenian ideal was civic sacrifice for temporal glory. You die for the city so that your name will live on in the collective memory of the state, as Pericles promised. You are buying immortality with your blood.
Right, a worldly immortality.
But the Christian ideal is sacrifice rooted in eternal love and justice. Christ didn't die to maintain a geopolitical boundary or a specific constitution. He died to redeem a people from every nation, tribe, and tongue for all eternity.
Beautifully said.
The earthly city demands your death to sustain its glory. The heavenly city is ruled by a king who gave his own life to sustain you.
That is the theological crux of the matter right there. When Pericles asks the citizens to become lovers of the city, he is demanding an affection and a devotion that, from a Christian perspective, belongs exclusively to God.
But this raises a really practical tension for the believer living today.
The modern application.
Right. We are living in ancient Athens, but we are living in highly charged political environments. We vote, we pay taxes, we care about the laws of our nations.
Sure.
Does this ancient critique mean that all civic pride is inherently idolatrous? Are Christians supposed to just completely detach from the political realities of the nations they live in, refuse to participate, and just wait for heaven because earthly nations aren't the eternal kingdom of God?
No, and this is where the discernment we talked about earlier becomes so crucial for daily life.
Okay, unpack that.
The text we are analyzing and the theology we are applying to it doesn't demand that Christians hate their country or withdraw from society. Rather, it demands that we keep the earthly city in its proper, limited perspective.
Right.
The immense benefit of studying Pericles through a Christian lens is that it sharpens a believer's discernment. It actually allows you to affirm the good insights of ancient Athens, and by extension, the genuinely good aspects of your own nation today.
Because there are objectively good, beautiful things in Pericles' speech. Acknowledging the idolatry doesn't mean we have to pretend democracy is bad.
Absolutely not. The beauty of ordered liberty is a profound good. The necessity of strong community and civic friendship, that concept of philia, is deeply aligned with loving your neighbor.
Yeah.
The nobility of self-sacrifice for the protection of others is a deeply Christian concept modeled by Christ himself.
So we can engage.
Christians can and absolutely should engage culturally and politically to promote justice, freedom, and human flourishing in their earthly cities. We can be deeply grateful for the constitutional protections we enjoy. We can honor those who protect us.
Like Jeremiah said, seek the peace of the city.
Yes. We are called to seek the peace and prosperity of the city we are exiled in, exactly as the prophet Jeremiah told the Israelites in Babylon.
But there is a massive but coming.
Yes, there is a but.
Let's hear it.
The but is that we must simultaneously recognize the absolute, unyielding limits of human government. We cannot cross the line into idolatry.
When does that happen?
Idolatry happens the moment we put our ultimate hope, our ultimate trust, and our ultimate allegiance in an earthly nation or a political party.
Oof. Yeah.
It happens when we believe that if our preferred political candidate loses, or our national borders change, or our economy falters, that all is lost and the world is ending.
Because then the state is God.
Exactly. When we believe those things, we have essentially bought into Pericles' rhetoric. We have made the state our functional God.
Wow.
This text, when viewed through the lens of the gospel, equips believers to be incredibly active, engaged, loving citizens of their earthly cities, precisely because their ultimate hope is anchored somewhere else.
That is such a freeing perspective. You don't need the earthly city to save you, so you are free to simply serve it without worshiping it.
Perfectly said.
It takes the crushing, impossible weight of ultimate salvation off the shoulders of our politicians and our political systems. They were never designed to carry that weight anyway.
No, they weren't.
Whenever we ask a government to be our savior, it will inevitably become a tyrant, or it will simply buckle under the weight of its own human frailty.
It will always buckle. Every human empire eventually falls. Every monument made of stone eventually crumbles.
And every monument made of words.
Yeah, every monument made of words eventually rings hollow in the face of death. But the kingdom of God remains unshakable.
What a journey we have been on today.
It's been a deep one.
We started in a grieving, terrified ancient city, huddled behind massive stone walls in the freezing winter of 431 BCE.
The panic room.
Right. We listened to Pericles deliver an absolute masterclass in political rhetoric, subverting the expectations of a traditional funeral dirge to build a soaring, almost intoxicating monument to human self-sufficiency, democracy, and civic virtue.
Using all those linguistic tricks.
Yes, using the tenses to make the city feel alive and immortal in the present moment. And then we pulled back the lens.
We brought in the plague.
We looked at the dark, unavoidable irony of the impending plague that Thucydides knew was coming. And we used that historical reality to pivot into a profound realization about the limits of human kingdoms when compared to the unshakable reality of the kingdom of heaven.
The ultimate contrast.
We saw how easily and how beautifully the state can become an idol, demanding the ultimate worship that belongs only to God.
And that brings us back to the brilliant, intentional structure of Thucydides' history, which leaves us with a final provocative thought.
Let's hear it.
Thucydides deliberately placed the absolute highest peak of human boasting, Pericles, claiming that Athens is the ultimate self-sufficient school of the world, needing no help from the divine, right next to the ultimate, inescapable proof of human weakness.
With the plague.
A microscopic plague that decimates the city, breaks down all social order, forces them to abandon their sacred burial rites, and reveals that beneath the marble and the beautiful rhetoric, they are entirely fragile. So, for you listening today, the question we have to consider is this. When the walls of our own carefully constructed lives, or the institutions of our societies, inevitably fail against the unexpected plagues of life, whether that is a literal illness, an economic collapse, or a massive social upheaval, where is your foundation actually built?
That's the question.
Are we fundamentally trusting in the versatile, self-sufficient, idealized school of Greece to save us? Or is our ultimate hope anchored in the unshakable, eternal city of God, whose builder and maker is God himself?
That is the question that outlasts every empire and every monument. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. Keep seeking truth, keep looking for those eternal perspectives hidden in the pages of history, and we will see you next time.